Morning, everyone. There's one thing that you must remember from our presentation, and that it's a really hard act to follow after Mark. Yeah. So, just setting the tone. No, my name is Shaun Foaden, and I head up the team with about 30 people in the Netherlands, in Leiden, just south of Amsterdam.
I'm Lieneke Happel, and I'm responsible for the commercial operations in the Netherlands. Although some people might have met me this week as bus leader number 3.
Yeah. DJ Lean, yeah. Okay, so this is our office in the beautiful old center of Leiden. It's actually a new facade. They built it in 1598, if I'm correct. And 3 houses behind, which form the building, they're from the medieval times. I think it's early 1300s. So it's a beautiful building. It's not ours. We rent it from one of the many water lords. We don't have warlords, but we have water lords in the Netherlands. And this was their headquarters. And they've moved to one building, and we've been renting there, the top 3 floors, since 2014. And if ever anyone's in Leiden, you're more than welcome. We have great coffee. So just knock on the door and come in. Okay, so maybe that's just the last thing about Mark, that if you have that image of beautiful Leiden, that's a nice takeaway from the presentation. But today we're going to be talking about strategy as the true north of your organization, and then how you can use that to define your data needs. And we have got a 5-step simple process which you're going to run through, and maybe more importantly is addressing learnings from the field. Because we've done this a few times now with customers, and it's good to go from the theory to the practice as well. Okay, so often data implementations begin with just stuff bubbling up out of the data sets that you have. Often the data sets define what you're going to create and use as reports. And that's fine, and that's often in the early stages of implementation, with organizations getting used to the data tool and getting used to the data, and they just see what comes bubbling up out of the data.
One of the things, however, which Mark alluded to this morning, is senior management then isn't always involved because it's not as relevant for them. And of course, all of us know that success in any implementation is greatly amplified if senior management is involved. It makes implementation easier. It makes success greater. Of course, yesterday we saw 2 master classes, one from Eversource and one from Penn Medical, where clearly there was a very enterprise-wide, holistic approach to data management. I was wondering in the room if all organizations are like that, because then our presentation will be in slight vein. But are there people in the room who have a more decentralized, slightly chaotic approach to data management? Look, I see some nods, Shaun.
Yeah,
we're good.
That's great. So, because I think that, as I said, that's fine with stuff bubbling up, but eventually you reach a point where you want to take you want to level up. You want to take your whole data game to the next level. And then basically, there's in our view, one true way to do that, and that's by using your strategy. Your strategy and your goals, feeding down through your success factors and KPIs, etc. Those ultimately should be your one true north and guiding your data needs. And right down, in fact, to the detail of a specific field. If you really need a field and you're not extracting it out of your data, but it's supporting your strategy, then you need to do something about getting that field into your data flow. I think. Yeah? Okay, moving on. Right. So let's move on now into the simple process. So we have 5 steps. And we've tried to make it a bit more exciting for marketing. So we have a clarify step, where you go from your strategy to your critical success factors. Quantify, you can feel a bit of a rhythm coming. Quantify is where you then start actually filling in the actual performance measures that you want to start using. And you brainstorm them, basically. And then choose is an essential step, where you want to limit right down to just a couple of KPIs that are really important to your strategy. And then you go into configure, and that's basically the implementation step for each KPI. You want to get that out into production, say. And often ignored, but I think very important, is the check step where you review and make sure that the choices that you've made so far remain relevant. Now, these 5 steps, they have very different characteristics, and in fact, we've split them up into 3 phases. The first phase is short, sharp, where it's just a couple of months. And then the configure phase is actually implementing. That's the nuts and bolts and the grind. And then the check phase with the feedback loop. And they all have very different timings. And in fact, they're going to be the phase 1, which is clarify, quantify, and choose, is normally done in our experience in about 2 to 3 months. It's a short, intense process. Phase 2 depends on the measures, the KPIs that you've chosen. Some will be low-hanging fruit and implemented quickly, and others will take longer. And then at a relevant cadence for your organization, say every year, you want to review and make sure that things like COVID, which have just torpedoed your whole strategy, need to be taken account of. So you need to update what you did in phase 1 and phase 2.
Yeah, we'll focus today a little bit on phase 1 because our assumption is that phase 2, implementing some KPIs and using our technology to do that, that's something you probably do and are comfortable with. And also to some extent phase 3, making sure that it remains relevant, that's part of your process, but that really phase 1, these steps to engage senior management, to translate your strategy into these data needs, that's what we're zooming into today.
Yeah. So let's move into just going down through the steps. So the clarify step is basically, it comes down to a 1-day workshop, but you need to have all of your management team involved. They are essential. You need to get them into a room. Very often you'll have a lot of documents supporting the strategy. Maybe we do quite a lot of work for the public sector, so those are sort of legally defined core tasks for fire department, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of information pre-existing, but very often it's not used to define the data needs of an organization. So by having the short, sharp session, you can get your management team on board and get them to focus down and start clarifying what are the key success factors for the organization. And the thing with keys, you can have a whole presentation on key success factors, but the most important part about them is this. This is a great slide for going backwards and forwards. You want to be able to get people, anything they're doing on their daily job should be aligned with the direction in which the organization is going. So basically, this is what key success factors do, is give everyone in the organization a guide as to what they should be doing. And of course, this will then influence your data needs. Having done that, the key success factors are the input to the next stage, which involves the next layer in the organization, or layers. You need to have, say, department heads, content experts, all involved. And again, the best format is in a workshop setting. And this would not be 1 day. It would be a series of workshops in which you actually sort of brainstorming and going from the 6 to 8 key success factors. You want to generate as many measures as people can think of. Often a lot of them are existing, but you want to expand and get as many measures as possible. And those are the performance indicators. I just want to spend a short time on performance indicators because very often we talk about KPIs as all measures are KPIs, and that's not correct. KPIs the K is very important. And in fact, when you look at sort of performance or measures, indicators, they fall into 2 types: results, measures, indicators, and performance indicators. And results indicators are basically, a lot of them are financial. They are the result of a collective effort. It's very difficult to say if that number is high or low. Lieven, you've got to get on the phone and start doing something. It's very difficult to actually make a direct action for a specific person or a specific team. On the other hand, a performance indicator, basically a performance indicator is a non-financial indicator. As soon as there's a number, a dollar or euro sign, it's probably a results indicator. A performance indicator is very, very specific, and if the result is low, then you can tell Lieven, you've got to get on the phone. It's a very specific low level, often a low level measure. Like The number of loose bolts on an engine manifold in a production line, that would be a performance indicator. It might not be a key performance indicator, because then you have to really think, okay, we might have thousands of performance indicators. You want to be able to identify for a specific organization at a specific moment in time what are the key performance indicators. And that takes a lot of effort, and that's what we do in the second step. And then the final thing I just want to address about in this first phase, the first 3 steps, is choosing. And that's a vital, because by now we might have got maybe 200, 250 indicators. You need to be able to limit that down to, say, 6 to 10 key performance indicators. And in these workshops, so you want to start with this mat, and it's essential that you get them down. So it's a key step in this whole process. And what we've done very effectively, actually, in workshop settings, is first you rank them, all these performance indicators. So it's in Dutch we say it's monnikenwerk, it's monk's work. You've got to just go through. The detail is the devil. See, I remember that. And you've got to go through the grind. First, you rank them by effectiveness. Are these going to be really effective for improving the performance of the organization? And then the next step is to say, are they going to be achievable? And then you end up with a nice 2x2 matrix, because that's one of the great things in life is a 2x2 matrix. And you obviously then want to be going for highly, or the ineffective measures, you can discard. If the organization feels they're ineffective, you discard them. The ones you want the top right, always aim top right. So you want highly effective, easily achievable measures. And those are the ones that are come filtering out as your KPIs.
Yeah, and I definitely want to say something about that left top corner, because we definitely shouldn't forget these KPIs, which are deemed very effective by senior management, but are actually not achievable. And we all know these, right? The data is not available in the primary process. Actually, this is not captured, but senior management wants to see them because they are very effective. And these ones are often forgotten, and in my opinion, they create discord between the people developing and actually by the users, and they can create frustration because people don't really understand. And narrative is now my new world, of course, but it influences your narrative because people get annoyed that they're not seeing what they need to see, but they're not willing to kind of run a project to maybe change the primary process or to change the base applications or to actually be able to deliver that KPI. So don't forget these, and I think it's very important for people in data projects to keep explaining about achievability, and that it's not that you don't want to deliver them or you don't want to put them in your reporting, but that you can't, and why not? And that if they want them, that's possible, but then it needs to be a separate project to change your primary processes to be able to make them achievable. Yeah,
I suppose a good example of that is like if information needs to be recorded in real time in the field, that everyone needs an iPad to be able to record that information. That might be the actual barrier to getting that data to become a KPI. So, you know, that type of practical thing needs to be addressed. Yeah. So, configure. So those are the first 3 steps, and that's where senior management really needs to be involved. I think in our experience, a lot of the time, we haven't achieved that in the past, and now with this process, we're being able to engage more C-level personnel in the whole process. So this is the 4th step, the configure, and it's basically all about execution. And as Lieneke said earlier, we won't focus a lot on that now. I think for a lot of people, it's probably the bread and butter of their data implementations. But just to share a couple of thoughts that we have. One of the things about this process, if you've gone from your strategy, key success factors, PIs, and then KPIs, is that you'll end up with a small group, 6 to 10, and you can manage it as a whole rather than as different sort of silos of work. By managing it as a whole, you get the management team involved and maintain their involvement. So that's a very useful step. The next thing is because you're managing it as a whole, it's useful to have a fairly uniform, high-level plan which encourages that coordination. So people across the KPIs know that, oh, we're in the design phase, and then we're going to be going into implementation, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but it is useful to have a framework. And then, of course, the actual delivery, although I've said what I just said, is this step looks like a waterfall approach. The actual implementation, we would strongly encourage being done via, we call it Agile Light. We've just manipulated the Agile manifesto in a way that suits us. And it's a really great way for keeping this functionality train rolling. So you get people engaged. Did you want to make a point about that? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because with Agile, of course, and one of the things, again, which we highly recommend is to find kind of product owners. So for a report or for a dashboard or for something, is identify somebody who knows the business process, who knows the data, and who can rally the troops, so to say, in the department, know their requirements, make the priorities, organize them for testing, sign off on releases. It really lightens the load on the team who has to create all these data needs. And in our customer group, we very often see that all that work is kind of assumed that the data team also takes care of that. So our recommendation would very strongly be is to identify people who can act as kind of the product owners. And often we call them power users maybe, but I guess a product owner takes a wider responsibility than just being a power user. So yeah, that would be something we would highly recommend in execution.
And that ties in nicely with taking the thin vertical slice approach. Rather than spending months getting each layer of the stack developed, then people lose their interest and attention span. But having a thin vertical slice approach by going right through the stack, you get pieces of functionality being rolled out often, and they're working pieces. So people, I think it was yesterday, was it in the Eversource presentation, about on the Monday having a discussion about certain measures, and then 2 weeks later having that rolled out and accepted. That would be a nice example of that. Just briefly, the final step is making sure that things remain relevant. As we've seen with COVID, things can change drastically, and for the current year, your choice of success factors and the performance measures that you've raised up as being key performance measures might change over time. You wouldn't expect them to change drastically, but you're going to have this sort of the sea of performance indicators, and on a regular basis, you need to review, okay, which ones are really the key performance indicators that we as an organization are going to pay a lot of attention to. So maybe some learnings from the field, which, yeah.
Yeah, so 4 thoughts we really want to share is, first of all, get the leadership team involved. Because as I saw a lot of nodding in the beginning, when the leadership team is involved and they daily use the data and the insights, it makes the implementation and the success of any data project much greater. So get them actively involved. It starts and ends really with them. The second part is use interactive workshops to create that energy and to create enthusiasm. So in that first one, we highly recommend to do it face-to-face. So get your leadership team in a room, time box it. Don't want to spend weeks on this. In 3 hours, you can achieve a lot. And if you agree the outcome, at the end, we're going to have 4 to 6 critical success factors. It's up to you to how quickly you do this. It really sets energy and focus in a room. And then for the next ones, when you have more of a town hall approach, what we did and what works very successfully is have rotating groups around each critical success factor, brainstorming the performance indicators. And then each group, which rotates, builds on the work the former group has done. So it creates a lot of energy, but it's also very efficient. So
you can capture a hang of a lot of group knowledge in a short time.
In a relatively short time.
Yeah.
And then when you do this, of course, you've now, in this process, you're going to capture a lot of knowledge. So do capture that, because you might not all be using it in this phase, and this documentation is not maybe the end-all and be-all, but you've now done this work. So take the time to document it, and making the translation to our software. This is, of course, your first start as input for your measure factory, because these are all the measures you might want to have as an organization. And then lastly, maintain momentum. If you have decentral activities already going on, and your management team has now said maybe these 6 KPIs are valuable to us, look at what you already have, because you probably have them. Revamp them, make them look different, and then present them so that you could gain some momentum and that you have some quick wins. And then keep delivering quick wins. And often having something is better than having nothing, right? And keeping the momentum is often much more important than really getting it right.
Yeah. Okay, so just to sum up a bit, we've got this 5-step process: clarify, quantify, choose, configure, and check with the various timings. I think the first 3 steps are really important, and I think are a game changer often for us. Get people involved in the workshops. Make sure that you limit down. The whole point is getting focus and choosing, and which is often difficult. Choosing and clarifying the focus that the organization is going to have over the coming period. Use the various tools that are available for speeding up implementation and making things accessible. And then make sure things remain relevant. You're not going to throw away all those performance indicators, but you're going to be choosing every so often, you're going to be choosing a couple to pull up and say, okay, these are key performance indicators.
So then concluding for today, we end with the triangle we all know: people, process, technology. We didn't talk about technology today in our presentation because you're in the room, so we know you have great technology. The second part is we did give you some process steps in terms of getting from strategy to your data needs. But I guess in the end, the biggest benefit of those process steps is engaging the people. And your senior management, you might not every day think of them as people, but they are, of course, your primary source, which can amplify your success in your data efforts. So getting senior management aligned and involved, it really amplifies the efforts you put in daily. And of course, senior management using any insights and data products every day in their leadership, but also in setting their strategy, of course, engages all the users. And again, this just creates a spiral which amplifies all the hard work we all put in daily to organize all these insights and analytics for our companies. Yeah.
And just to say, we are nearly done with a white paper about this whole process. So a lot more detail, obviously, than we have presented here, but that should be available before the end of the year. Yeah. Okay, thanks very much.